I like to bring out a little aspect of Jenny and maybe have Jenny and Steve comment on it. And way back in the day, the IBM and its version of Plan, Do, Check, Act called it the defect prevention process. It was still looking at how we do things better, how to stop defects in particular. And it had two loops. One was the local loop. What are things that we as a team can actually do to help lower the stuff? And then there was an organizational loop that had to go to a queue of some kind, its own Kanban, its own backlog, and say, okay, these are things on the organizational queue, and there has to be an organizational improvement effort as well. So they saw it going on in two different loops. Watch out with those thumbs. You're going to go lock yourself up again, Jenny. Two different loops. There was the local loop. And I think when we talk about retrospectives, we really want to focus a lot on the local loop. What can we as a team try to make it better? Even if it's scary, even if it's weird. But occasionally we're going to have to throw things out into the organizational loop because you're hiring the wrong people. Well, we can't change that. We need to fund a new position. We need to do that. But there has to be some place for that to go, right? Somewhere where they say, hey, there's a place for it to go. There's some accountability so people can say what's actually happening with that stuff as opposed to it went to the black hole of new ideas.
Yep.
Right. And this is where Jenny's Scrum Master becomes really important because they're the ones that have to take it to that outside loop and then hold that outside loop accountable.
And to Mark, your earlier question about this is where the organization can and should help. And I think we've talked about this when we've talked about like scaling agile, this organizational wide or project wide or product wide retrospective is incredibly powerful, right? It's no reason that the team should stop, right? The teams need to stop. But as Earl was saying, they're going to find some set of stuff. A lot of the teams I've worked with, it's build stuff where they can't fix it on their own. It's just too big. It's beyond their span of control. Or I had a group once where the metrics the organization was actually using were disincentivizing a handoff between the people who were building the code and the people who were testing the code within the sprint boundary. Which is like the worst thing you could possibly do for a Scrum team, right? They're pulling the people apart. Those teams couldn't fix that. That needed to go to the leader of the product development organization so they could change the metrics that they were using. So Earl's point is a good solid point. You know, the healthiest organizations have this. Each team's doing their own. And then the product level is also doing, product or project level is also doing this as well.
So hierarchy in some respects.
Yeah, hierarchy in some respects.
Yeah. So what when you have these meetings, right?